Live from our studios, just steps from the fabulous Las Vegas Strip, it's The Business Lounge with your host, David Wright.
Hi, welcome to The Business Lounge. I'm your host, David Wright. With me today, I have fellow Minnesotan, author, entrepreneur, Patty Roche. Patty, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dave. I am delighted to be here all the way from Minnesota.
Yep, and I know your arms are tired because you just flew in, right? Yeah. Oh, tired jokes, tired jokes. Actually, we had a conversation, about 3 weeks ago now? Was it 3 weeks, 2 weeks ago?
I think it was about 3 weeks ago.
And I didn't know it at the time, but we have a lot in common in our background. So why don't you let the audience know a little bit about who you are to start off with today?
Well, I'll tell you what. Back in Minnesota, I was in the food business. I spent 30 years in corporate marketing and sales positions, mostly in food, but I did a little dabbling in other industries. And so I went all the way from motorcycles and golf cars to pet supplies. So I've been around the marketing circuit here. And after 30 years in doing all that and traveling extensively, I thought, you know, it's time to do something where I could step out and do a little bit on my own and enjoy some time to do some of the other interests I have. So after 30 years, I'm a corporate dropout.
That's not a bad thing to be, by the way. I am too. A couple of things. You do several things. You do them all well, but we're gonna talk about Dreamwalker today. And let's get right to it, because in chapter 4, you said, well, if there's one chapter you're going to read chapter 4, and so I went through chapter 4, and it talks about color, right?
It does.
So there were several colors that had dual meanings. Can you tell the audience the significance of things having two meanings that they may come against?
Absolutely. In fact, the color part of this really came to me after I decided to write this book. I spent many, many years writing down my dreams and the meaning of them. And then with 10, 20, 30 years hindsight, I went back and looked at the excerpts. As I started reading them, I realized that I painted so many of them in colors. And that's one of the things that didn't stick in my mind. You know, when you have a dream, you have a lot of symbolism. You might say, well, I dreamt about an angel, or I dreamt about a snake, or whatever. But do you ever tell anybody, well, I dreamt about something yellow in my dream, or I dreamt about something teal? Generally, you don't, and I didn't either until I went back and looked at all these excerpts. And the interesting thing was that pattern is when I dreamt about something and then I wrote my interpretive notes and I wrote something, I was a little cautious or wary of something, inevitably I had painted that dream, something in the dream, in yellow. Yellow's a cautionary color. Think about NASCAR, the yellow flag, yellow yield signs, and so on. So that's when that pattern, I started to say, whoa, there's really something to this.
But isn't yellow also the sun and warming, and it's an inviting color? It's a warm color?
It can be. And what you learn after you've done this dream interpretation for so many years is that some of that symbolism is common to a lot of people, but other parts of that symbolism becomes very unique to you. So a sun might be very happy and bright in somebody else's life, but a sun might be cautionary, that yellow color, in someone else's custom dictionary, if you will. And so as I went through and I looked at the symbolism in my dreams, I created my own little custom dictionary.
You had talked about in that chapter, if I remember correctly, there was a little piece on limousines. Why did that come into play? Why the significance of the limousines and the color of the limousine?
I dreamt a lot about work. You can imagine 30 years worth of work. It was a very competitive environment, and I did a lot of things on my gut feel. But when you're in this dog-eat-dog world and you're working for companies that value things like numbers and research and facts and figures, you want to verify what you're doing. And so my verification was my dreams. So my gut feel might say, this person, I think, is somebody that could be trusted. It might be a customer, it might be a vendor, it might be a coworker. But if my dream told me I could trust that person, then that was verification for me. So in that particular dream about the limousines, it was about a couple of people. And it happened to be women. And I was debating about whether I could share some confidences with these women. Two work friends, you know, I hadn't known them for a long time. And so in that dream, one of the people got into a black limousine and one of the women got into a teal limousine. Well, if you look at the meaning of colors, teal stands for trustworthiness, loyalty, friendliness. And so when I was looking at the two women in this dream, and the one got in the black limousine, the other one got in the teal limousine, who do you think I thought was the most trustworthy? It was the woman that got into the teal limousine.
Gotta love the logo then, right?
Absolutely. That's my color right there.
Teal and purple, confidence and royalty. You know, a lot of times when people talk about their dreams, everybody has dreams. Not everybody can recall their dreams. What would you recommend that somebody do in order to recall their dreams?
I think it's really a trained deal. You can train yourself to remember dreams, and you're right, everybody does have dreams. And some may just find it amusing, so they get up and they tell somebody, here's what I dreamt about, and then 15 minutes later they don't remember it. And I do that occasionally as well. But if you really want to use your dreams for some kind of a sort of a life decision-making tool, you train yourself to be good at journalizing your dreams. Couple of tips. First of all, you want to have your lighting very low. So if you wake up from a dream and all of a sudden you turn the lights on and it's bright, it jars you awake, and inevitably you're going to forget that dream very quickly. So keep a very dim light. For myself, I happen to have one of those book lights that just comes around your neck. I turn it on very dimly, just enough so that I can see my journal and the pen. And I can tell that I'm writing. I don't even care if I write in the lines or not. I just want to be able to know that the ink in the pen is working. The other thing is I would suggest that you don't have anybody talk to you right away. Unless you're going to immediately tell somebody your full dream, write it down first and then tell somebody afterwards. And in fact, my better half has been trained, so when he sees me writing, he doesn't say a thing until I finish doing my journal entry. And then finally, writing in itself is just really useful. And if write in detail. When you write down the dream, I might say, well, I dreamt about a big tall guy and his name was Dave. But it's more helpful if you put in, I wrote about Dave and he was wearing a yellow shirt, or he was wearing knee-high boots, or he was sitting in a position that was fairly aggressive, or something like that. Be as detailed as you can, because you might not think it's really important at that time. But trust me, when you go back many years later and you look back at that journal entry and you realize that was very descriptive. I said that about the person, and now I understand, because 20 years later I understand that that person was not to be trusted, or he turned out to be a terrific friend in life.
So there are several other things aside from color that other people they dream about, places they dream about, situations they dream about, and other people. What is the significance of the difference between those groups of things, or whether they're grouped together?
Again, that's really part of your custom dictionary, and it's what you grew up with. So for example, let's say you grew up on a farm and I didn't. If you dream about a farm, that may mean some very nice, warm, homey things to you. You know, growing up with a great big family and having family dinners together and all that. But for me, my first experience with a farm was when I was teaching high school. I got stuck in a snowdrift, didn't have my boots on. I had to walk through the snowdrift to a farmhouse, and these wonderful people took me in and they said, shame on you for not wearing your boots and all that, you know. So my experience was with the farm was that it saved me from something. These people were so nice and welcoming. Your experience might have been that you grew up on the farm and it has a whole different set of meanings than mine does.
So if I have, let's look at animals. A lot of people love animals. Animals can be both friendly and unfriendly. Let's say I had a pair of owls that were basically both in focus at one time. One moves out of focus, one comes back into focus. What might that mean?
That's very telling to me right off the bat. If you look at symbols in dreams, they usually take on a metaphor of some sort for real life. So what does an owl tell you? Well, for me, that metaphor says wisdom. And so the fact that you've got a pair of owls, one is going into focus and one is blurry and back and forth, tells me that you're struggling with the wisdom of something. And if you look at what else was in the dream or what else you're going through in your life at the time, you might say, I'm trying to get wise enough to make a decision about this, but it's in and out of focus. I'm not quite there with the right decision yet. That's what I would say.
Okay. I asked those questions because, one of the things that I was fortunate or am fortunate to have is a sense of detail. When something happens, I pretty much remember it in its entirety. And you were talking about the snowstorm. We basically had the same experience coming back from the farm where my wife is from. We're driving, we're about 2 miles out of this little town called Ivanhoe, and you can't see a thing. Logic would have told you to stop right there and just wait. But I also understood that I'm on a road, and I don't know if somebody's going to become. So we pressed on. We found a family that took us in overnight, and I should have never left. That's the whole thing, and I can relate to that.
There's that 20/20 hindsight, huh?
Yeah, but when I look at that, sometimes I go back to that time, and there are still snowstorms in my dreams where I can't see. Is that something that is coming and it's going to be relieved or unveiled, or is that something I should stay away from?
If you have recurring visions of that snowstorm, I would pay very close attention to that. Because a recurring vision can mean either good or bad, depending on how that translates in your particular dreams. For myself, a snowstorm would be scary because I lived in Minnesota. I was stuck in snowdrifts and so on. And drifting, or the feeling of being enveloped in something, is probably sort of a suffocating feeling. Mm-hmm. So for me, that would be negative. I would ask you to go back and think about the experiences of snowstorms in your life. Maybe it was all fun. You had a snowstorm and you had siblings or friends and you went sliding down the hill and it was a great big happy family sort of a thing. So a snowstorm in your life might be something very interesting and warm.
Okay. If you were going to recommend to people, what, aside from writing something down, is this something that you share with people? Is this something that you keep close to the vest, or it depends?
It depends. I suggest that you get a dream buddy. And believe it or not, your dream buddy is usually not your spouse. Almost everybody I've talked to...
There's a joke in there, but I won't go there.
Almost everybody I've talked to in life who shares my dream situation has a spouse who thinks they're crazy. And that has just been that way throughout life. Opposites attract, I guess. And so I found a dream buddy early in life. And when I was struggling with a lot of the dynamics of the workplace, there was a woman that worked in the same place I did. And so she and I would come in the mornings and we'd share our dreams. What did you dream about last night? And we'd share it, and inevitably, she would tell me her dream, and I'd go, oh, Candace,
okay.
For crying out loud, that's it.
I got to stop you right there, because that's great. And I'm going to be sexist for a moment.
Go ahead.
Most guys can't talk to one another, let alone share feelings. So I'm going to go, hey, Scott, did you have a dream last night? Do you want to share with me?
I didn't know who you are.
Well, there are guys that share dreams with me. In fact, I'm going to tell you about one friend who is actually ex-CIA. And he happens to be a writer. I'm a writer. And so we sat down when he helped me edit my book. We sat down and talked about this, and he's had some very sort of supernatural experiences of his own. And you can imagine, being in a tough business like the CIA, you might think that's a little bit hard to share that. But he and I shared a lot of ideas and sort of bonded on that whole thing. I think you can share it without talking about your feelings. Just share the images of what you saw in your dream with the other person and let the other person react to it. I mean, we all deal in metaphors out there. So you don't have to be a female to do that. So if you told me, like the two owls, if that was a dream of yours, I think that's a great conversation starter, is strictly talk about the images.
Okay. How long do most people dream, or do they have a series of dreams through the night? Some fade, some stay. What's been your typical experience?
Generally, you dream a lot of dreams. But the most meaningful dream is the one that you get in that REM sleep, the very deep sleep. So it's generally well into the night, and it's probably an hour or so before you wake up that you're in that deepest sleep. And that's where your most meaningful dreams are. I've gotten up and written down a journal entry where I'll say, in this scene, so-and-so happened, and then in this scene, and so it's a series of vignettes for me, and then the third or fourth vignette will be much longer, much more meaningful, and much more to the story than the first two were.
Okay. So if, I'm an insomniac, so I probably wake up 3 or 4 times during the night. But when you consider over the course of a year, you might have 600 or 700 dreams. What would be one of the keys to determine whether or not which one of those dreams is significant?
I think the patterns. And that's the benefit that I saw, because some people will think of a dream just by itself. I had this dream and it was very scary, or there was this dark figure in there, and they'll try to apply some meaning to that. It might be, but typically not if it's just one dream. If you see a pattern of dreams where you can say, what's going on in my life right now, and what am I dreaming about? So for example, for me, I went through a series of dreams, and probably 2 or 3 in a row that were about a particular person at work that I was dealing with. And this person was somebody who I didn't really trust. The person seemed to be out after somebody else's job, that sort of a dynamic. And so when my friend said to me, well, so-and-so wants to talk to me about something, I said, you know what, I had a dream about him. I just would not tell him too much about your personal situation if I were you. Simple caution like that. My friend didn't listen the first time. He shared some information, and it came back to bite him later. Well, I had 2 or 3 dreams after that about the same thing. And so even though my friend did not take that to heart and do anything with it, for me it said, you've dreamt about this guy 3 times now, and it hasn't been good. Don't share any personal information with him, because it may come back to haunt you later.
So if I understand, what you're really saying is the environment you're currently in, or the situation or circumstances you're currently in, trigger a lot of the dreams that you have, or where you're focused in life. How can you change, take your dreams and move off a negative focus into a more positive situation?
Some experts say that you can actually program yourself to have a dream. It's called lucid dreaming, where you dream and then you sort of come out with your own ending, if you will. Now, there are some people who believe in lucid dreaming and some don't. I myself have not had that real experience of lucid dreaming, but I will go to bed at night sometimes and say, you know, I need an answer to whatever problem I'm dealing with, and place that thought in my mind with the hope of dreaming something that will point me in the right direction.
When you dream, is it because that you kind of quiet the cares of the day and the concerns of the day, that your mind really gets clarity, and so you come to depend on some of the answers that may be projected in your dreams?
I think so. I've talked to people who have told me that they will almost dream when they meditate. And so some people, meditation is their form of relaxation. It is that ultimate act of relaxing, so that all these subconscious thoughts can come in and you can do something with them, use them as a tool to help you in your life. For myself, for example, I'm a musician. And when I play, I can't think about anything else. I have to think about the music and what I'm doing in response to the rest of the band that I'm playing with. So that's my R&R, if you will. And it's kind of funny because that scenario comes out in my dreams a lot. I play the French horn, and I will have
one of my favorite instruments, by the way.
Well, thank you. Well, and I will have dreams about going into a band setting, And I will be there ready to play. I look up at the conductor and I have no horn. And so then I'm panicking. I don't have the tools I need to do what I need to accomplish. Or I'll have a similar dream where I'll have the horn, the conductor's there, and I have no music. And I read that as I need some instructions. I need sort of a roadmap as to where I'm going. That's what the music represents. Other times I'll have that same dream, but the conductor's missing. And that tells me that there's leadership that's missing in whatever struggle I'm dealing with at the time. And I think you'll find whatever's happening in your life, whatever's a familiar scenario to you, might come out in dreams like that in different pictures like I have.
You know, I'm going to wrap it up. And, you know, you could go on for hours with this. If there were three things that you would sum up this process to help people with, what would those three things be?
I think, first of all, is to find a buddy. Because when you have these dreams, to be able to talk to somebody about it is so helpful for that objectivity, where somebody can look at it. And since I've written this book, I've had a number of people come up to me and say, I had this dream I have to tell you about, but I have no clue what it means. Well, more often than not, they will tell me, and immediately I can see the metaphor that's coming through in their dream. And rather than just telling them what my answer is, I'll ask them questions. And I'll say things like, well, did you think that perhaps those owls might represent wisdom in your life? Or what about that person in your dream? Did you have a good feeling about that person or a bad feeling about that person? So again, the thought that you can converse with somebody about that dream buddy, I think, is really important. Secondly is the whole act of writing it down. Because when you write it down, you've got it in the moment that you've just awakened, and you've got all the details there. In fact, just the other day, I was looking at a dream that I had written back in January of 2015 that actually predicted something that happened in April of 2015. I had completely forgotten I had dreamt that, but in going back and reviewing some of my dreams most recently, went, oh my gosh, that was so telling, and I completely forgot about it. But the fact that I had written it down in great detail, I was able to go back and realize it was a bit of a premonition dream. And then the third thing I would say is to train yourself to sleep. You know, the world doesn't get enough sleep. Our busy lives, we just don't get enough sleep out there. And to dream, you have to sleep. And you don't want it to be an induced sleep where you're taking any kind of sleeping aids or alcohol or things like that. You really want it to be a good, wholesome sleep. So if you can do something like meditate or relax, have a cup of tea, or something like that before you go to bed so that you can calm yourself, so that you can get into that real restful REM sleep, that's where your most meaningful dreams will happen.
Outstanding. So where can people find out more about Dreamwalker and yourself?
Dreamwalker is on Amazon, and there is also a website, www.dreamwalkerdreams.com. Information about me. There's also a link to my Facebook page on there, and a link where you can actually purchase the book. And so Dreamwalker has been purchased by people on Amazon. I also keep copies myself here, so feel free to email me at info@dreamwalkerdreams.com. Tell me about your dreams. I love to hear people's stories, and I'd love to be able to respond back and start that conversation about the meaning in your dreams.
Patty, thank you for being on the show. This is Dave Wright for the Business Lounge, where we talk to real people about real business and real success. Until the next time, have a blessed day.